To Leadership is Me, the podcast that brings you raw and real conversations with everyday entrepreneurs who chose to rise. I'm your host, Dahlia, and each episode we're going to dive into the mindset shifts, life lessons, and defining moments that helped people unlock something greater. So if you've ever felt called to more and you just didn't know where to start, this is the place for you, because leadership is not just about a title, it's a choice. And for you, that choice starts right now. So today I am talking to Chris. He is the founder and CEO of Awareness to Obtain. And his story is absolutely crazy. So after suffering from addiction and trauma for over 25 years, so literally a quarter of his life, right? He went back to school, he became a master certified life coach, and he now helps men, right? Which is crazy because a lot of times when we're talking about coaching and development, we kind of lean more towards the female space. So he helps men get through struggles, overcome trauma, and learn the action steps to really just start living their life. So I want to stress again how excited I am to talk to Chris, but first we'll just do a quick introduction. Hi, Chris, how are you today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm really, really good. As I said earlier, enjoying the fact that the weather is getting back to Texas normal. That's what I signed up for, and that's what I'm wanting.
Yeah.
So before we hop into me picking your brain and hearing everything, why don't you just start off, give us 60 seconds about your business and what it is that you do.
Yeah, so it started with humble beginnings, like you talked about. I'm in recovery. I now have 14 years sober, and when I first started, a life coach was very instrumental in helping me put the pieces back together. So I realized I had a passion to do it as well, and it started out with some pro bono recovery work, and then it led to going back to school, and it's grown into YouTube channels and public speaking and all kind of craziness since then. So.
Awesome. So did you ever even envision yourself being here today?
No, I didn't. Also have 35 years in the construction field, and so I thought that that was going to be my life, right? Problem is, I didn't get any real fulfillment out of that, and now that I've started this new venture, I realize that life isn't about money; it's about purpose and about fulfillment, and I'm getting that out of this new venture, you know.
You know, what I find so interesting is that, like you said, the word fulfillment.
Hmm.
And a lot of times we don't enter into situations expecting to get as fulfilled as we
Yeah.
as we normally do. Like,
Yeah.
it's hard, especially when you're going through, to see the light at the end of the tunnel. So
Hmm.
I know you said that you went through, some addiction and trauma, and you said you're sober, is it for 13, 14?
14 years. Yeah.
14 years. So facing yourself,
Mhm.
talk to me about that, because I always say that when you're trying to make a shift in life, you go through kind of a me versus me,
Yeah. Yeah.
situation. So what was that like to just really take a look at Chris and say, something's got to change?
Yeah, it was there's a lot in my journey. There was health problems, there was a failed suicide attempt, there were tons of things that happened in my life, right, that made me realize that I was going to die if I didn't make some changes. I thought drugs and alcohol were my problem, but they were actually my solution because I didn't have positive coping mechanisms on how to deal with how I felt inside. And so once I started doing the real work and realized that from a very young age, I hated what I saw in the mirror. That was the real issue. And so it took a lot of self love work to be able to conquer those demons.
Did you have support, or were you conquering alone?
No, I mean, I was obviously married for a long time and those types of things. I was successful in, I had all the shiny stuff and the good job and all that, but there was a core unworthiness, a core imposter syndrome that was embedded in me since like the age 5. And I never dealt with that. So it just grew and grew and grew to where I became what I like to call a people pleaser. I didn't like myself. So if I could make you like me, then I hated myself a little less. So I literally put all my worth based on what other people thought of me. And I did that for a great number of years.
That is one that is so real,
Mhm.
um, and so powerful, because
Mhm.
imposter syndrome, people
Mhm.
pleasing. I mean,
Mhm.
as you said, it's been something that was with you since a young age, and a lot of
Yeah.
times we don't realize, especially when we choose to turn to like drugs or alcohol in order to appease things. It gives you a false sense of security, right? In that moment,
Yeah.
everything
Yeah.
seems wonderful.
Yeah.
Everything is gone away until that moment is over and you're
Yeah.
back at night just with the core of who you are. So what was the hardest part, do you believe, about taking ownership? Because that is a section that people really struggle with. Like, if I don't feel I'm worthy, how do I cross that bridge over to even thinking that it's a possibility? So what was the hardest part about you having to take ownership of yourself, as well as taking enough ownership to go back to school, to
Yeah.
start a business, and to then flourish it enough to say, you know what, I'm going to help other men with this?
Yeah, I think the hardest part is, towards the end of my active addiction, like I said, it was a failed suicide attempt, and also the love of my life finally had gotten sick of it and divorced me and filed for custody of my son. And after that happened, I had hit what they call rock bottom, right? I had lost everything I cared about. And so then it was like, all right, well, if you want a chance to try to even rebuild any of that, you have to rebuild yourself first. And so I really put the time in, tons of morning meditation and exercise and positive affirmation. And I still, to this day, when I get out of the shower in the morning, I look in the mirror and I say, I love you to myself 10 times. That's something that I've been doing for years. And that's what it took to just even have that glimmer of hope that maybe I could start liking myself, and motivational speakers and large network involved in the recovery community that was always at my side, and tons of things like that, to where I learned some action steps that allow me to walk out of the front door feeling like I can crush the world instead of letting the world crush me.
Literally answered the next
Mm.
question that I was just really stirring about. Like, in order to do that, I was like, you had to have put something in place, right? Like,
Yeah,
you couldn't just
yeah,
wake up one day and be like, okay, I'm
yeah,
good, I'm
yeah.
perfect.
Mm,
But those small things that you
mm,
said, like telling yourself that you love yourself every day.
mm,
And
mm.
am I guessing correctly that the first couple times you said it, you didn't believe it, but you just
Yeah,
kept saying
yeah.
it?
It was probably a year, and I had already got involved in recovery counseling
Okay.
before I truly believed in myself. It was that kind of, okay, like, I got a passion for this, I'm gonna fake it till I make it kind of thing, right? So, I was getting there, but there were still times, especially in isolation, when I was all alone, where I thought I was incapable of making these changes, and I thought that, the fear of failure and all that stuff creeps in, and I'm not good enough to be a life coach. I'm not good enough to be a public speaker. All this kind of things creep in. And it was a matter of the network that I had. And my first mentor, was a life coach, and he was very instrumental in giving me the encouragement, and also the hard criticism when I needed it, to make me realize that I was capable in being a lot more than I ever was. And the main thing is he helped me find my purpose, and exactly what God wanted me to be. And that was huge. Finally realized that I went through all of this crap because I used to be, why is me? Why is God letting all this happen to me, right? And then I
Right.
realized it was all so that I could become who I am now. I wouldn't be able to help the men that I help now if I wouldn't have gone through all that stuff.
It's great. And it's
Mhm.
amazing that you were able to turn that around and not just use it to stay in, what we call like the victim
Mhm.
mentality. Like,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I think at a certain point, everybody can relate to something happening. Now, I
Mhm.
believe there's some people that have journeys that are just on a whole nother frontline level.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but all of us have at least had those moments where we're like, well, what have I done that I deserve this? Or
Yeah.
as you said, like,
Mhm.
why me,
Yeah.
God? And it is so important to not stay stuck there. And I love the fact that you talked about how you had someone around you that was willing to tell you the truth.
Yeah.
A lot of people that come out of situations struggle financially. And so, in addition to maybe having the mental challenges or whatever
Mhm.
occurred in their life,
Mhm.
then the next thing is, well, I don't have the money to do X, Y, Z, or I don't,
Yeah.
I can't
Yeah.
find. So how
Mhm.
did you again make that shift, or was finances even a challenge for you?
Oh yeah, so they were. I mean, don't get me wrong. Up into the end of addiction, I always had a decent job, but at the end, I became completely unemployable. And when she decided she had had enough, I became homeless and was living in my car. So the financial struggle was real. I ended up having to go to a free rehabilitation program called the Salvation Army Rehabilitation Program. And I lived there for 6 months. And at that time, I was, no job, homeless, and living in a free rehab where I had to work for them every day to pay for my rehabilitation. And so that was humbling, but it's also exactly what I needed, right? Because it's like, all right, you're at the bottom, the only way is up. So when I got out of rehab, I'm very lucky that the construction company that I was in upper management with allowed me to come back. And then it was a matter of rebuilding the inside, because through some certain training, I finally realized that I was going about it completely backwards. The key to life is if you're happy, the people around you will be happy.
Yeah, and isn't it amazing? It's
Yeah.
like the Bible verse that talks about your cup
Mm.
runneth over.
Yeah.
It says your cup runneth over,
Mhm.
right? So your cup, our personal cups have to be filled
Yes.
first.
Hmm.
And people then,
Yeah.
are blessed by the
They are.
overflow,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So it's such a more valuable experience to be
Yeah.
whole on the inside
Yeah.
first.
Yeah.
Then the rest of it is just
Yeah,
easy.
and it's like goal number one, right? And that's what I didn't realize is, perfect example. By the way, I am remarried to the woman that divorced me and took custody of my son, right? Um, and she never stopped loving me. She just
Right.
was watching me kill myself, and she couldn't take it any longer. She's a physician's assistant. She's a medical professional, and so she didn't know how to help me. And so, but she couldn't help me until I was willing to help myself,
There you go.
you know? And so that's part of what I'm doing now is, the YouTube channels. And I also have another thing called Family Forum where a partner and I, we try to teach the women that are dealing with men that are struggling like this on what to do. Because for every good man, there's a great woman, right? That's a great
Absolutely.
thing. But there are also a lot of frustrated women out there that don't know how to support the men that they love and support them in what they're going through, and because there's just not a lot of resources and not a lot of knowledge out there. Women are more willing to seek help. Men deal with all this stuff silently. And it gets to the boiling point to where we can't even function in life. So that is my goal. I am the face of this whole movement to where I want men to know that there's a place to go and they can be vulnerable and we can talk about any subject. And there's nothing that they're going through that I haven't already gone through. And all I want to do is try to help them find some peace and start living the way they actually should be living.
I am so touched. If you had to clap.
Mhm.
I am so touched that you were able to reconcile that relationship, because the first thing
Mhm.
that popped in my
Mhm.
mind was she was stuck too.
Yeah.
While you were going through and in your battles, she was also having her own battles. Especially, I can
Mhm.
imagine
Mhm.
working in the medical industry and not feeling like you can help the
Mhm.
person that you love who's going through
Yeah.
something that
Yeah.
can be defined
Mhm.
as medical. So
Mhm.
I love the fact that you said that you now have something that is for
Mhm.
women, because there are a lot of women that are potentially trying their best to support,
Mhm.
but don't know what that looks like, or the lines can be blurred between
Mhm.
support and
Yeah.
enablement.
Mhm.
So can you give me just a little blurb of some of the stuff that you talk to women about?
Yeah, like I said, a lot of it is how to support, right? There's a difference between support and enable, right? And most women don't have the knowledge of how to properly support, right? And how could you? Relationships are like children. Children don't come with a handbook,
Oh,
and neither do relationships, right? We fall in love and we have no clue on how to function, it properly in that relationship. And then you add addiction, or you add depression, or you add certain struggles like that that are men are going through. Like I said previously, We don't talk about it. You ask a man what's wrong, nothing, I'm fine. That's our go-to response, because for one, we don't think that anybody cares. And for two, we're afraid if we do open up, we're going to instantly be judged for it. Right? Because we're supposed to be the provider, we're supposed to be the leader, we're supposed to be the strong guy that chases the demons away for everybody else. That's what we were taught since we were a kid. So how am I going to admit that I got my own demons? you know and so the main thing that the family forum does is show women how to support men that are struggling with these kind of things. It also shows them how to um build family wealth and different things like
Mm,
that, how to parent together. These are all things that I learned once I started this personal development journey. Is you know we live in a different society now than we did when you and I were kids, right?
exactly.
It takes more than one paycheck. There are a lot of women out there that make more money than their husbands do, right? There's a different social dynamic. So because of that, there needs to be different knowledge on how to navigate those things and how to live in a functional relationship. And the family forum covers all those types of things and more.
So impressed, and I think it's so powerful to hear it from a man's perspective.
Mhm.
A lot of times we do come across, different coaching or so forth, that
Mhm.
it's a woman
Mhm.
who's essentially talking about a man's perspective
Yeah.
or
Mhm.
teaching a woman how to deal with a man. So I
Yeah.
think it's so powerful that for it to come from a man.
Mhm.
So when we talked about having that space with a
Mhm.
woman where you can truly let the walls down. What does that
Mhm.
mean for you as a man to be able to have that kind of space? How does it empower you?
Yeah, it's completely freeing. I cannot tell you my mentor told me that when we are young, every trauma is a rock. And
Mm.
we have this backpack on and we keep throwing all these rocks in the backpack, right? And eventually that backpack gets so heavy that we can't walk, or meaning we can't move forward. So then we are stuck. So once you get to that point where you're stuck, the only way to get unstuck is to start getting rid of those rocks, right? The problem is that most men, in our most intimate relationship that we have is with our significant other, and we are afraid to take those rocks out of the backpack around them. So once you get to the point to where you can do that, then they can help you realize what the real problem is. My wife, knew I was trying to kill myself and all these things, but she didn't know why, because I wouldn't tell her, because I honestly didn't know what the real problem was myself. So it was a matter of getting some coaching and figuring out what the real problem was, starting to work on that on my own, and then allowing myself to be vulnerable enough to present all that to her in a way that I wasn't going to feel judged, in a way that I was going to get the support that I needed from her to become the man that I wanted to be.
So, what is it like being a father who
Oh,
has gone through this type of journey?
yeah, it's crazy. I have two stepdaughters that she had from her previous marriage, and they saw horrible parts of it, right? And it sucks that I put them through that. Watching somebody in addiction is hell, you know. And now, thank God, in sobriety, we have had another child at the age of 45, and we have a 9-year-old son together. And he has never seen me drink, and that is a great testament to my life, that that young man will never have to see his daddy in
Mm.
active addiction, right? But yes, as a father, like, I didn't know how to be a father. My dad was an alcoholic, and he was there financially, but that was it. So I had no education on how to be a father. I had no clue. And so I did what I could, and I was mostly, the guy that worked all the time and then took him to Disney World, you know. But there was no emotional support for me. I realized is most of my problems were because I had no guidance when I was younger. And so I made it my biggest goal to make sure that my son has every tool that he needs. And so, what we do on top of helping men deal with their struggles is teach them how to raise better children and give them proper guidance. If I would have had some of the tools that I have now, if I'd have had those at 14, it would have made a huge difference in my life.
Oh, absolutely. I can
Yep.
imagine.
Yeah. So the thing is, the goal is to, I'm a true believer in better people make better employees, they make better leaders, they make better business owners, but they also make better fathers, better husbands, and so that's the goal, right? Is you build yourself up from within, and that ripple effect happens to where now I have the opportunity to make sure that my son doesn't struggle the way that I did, because I have the knowledge and the training and the expertise on how to hopefully guide him away from those things.
I can resonate,
Mhm.
especially personally, with the breaking of the cycle. Because
Mhm.
essentially that's what it sounds like you did. Like you
Yeah.
really broke the cycle so that your children do not carry that on as they
Yeah.
move into their adulthood, as they
Yeah.
move into
Mhm.
their marriage, and you're
Yeah.
allowing your son to see you as the man you want to,
Yeah.
you really want it to be.
Yeah.
So even at this stage, do you have a fear of failing?
Yeah. I think some fear is a great thing, right? Fear can be destructive or it can be your biggest driving force, right? Okay. So for me, when those fears pop up, I know what's on the other side of it. If I can conquer it, then there's greatness on the other side because I've proven that to myself, right? So to me, when I fear something, that makes me want to try it even harder, and it wasn't always that way. It used to be the fear, oh, well, I could probably do that, but I'm just going to screw it up anyway. So why try?
Yeah.
Now it's like, you know what? I don't know if I can do that or not, but I'm going to give it 120%. And if I fall down, I'm going to get right back up and I'm going to try it again. And that takes a lot of personal growth and a lot of years of positive affirmation being pounded at me from multiple different platforms.
Absolutely, and it also kind of shows that we at the end of the day we have a
Mhm.
choice.
Yeah.
Like that.
Mhm.
Sometimes that self talk, not sometimes, a lot of
Mhm.
times that self talk could drive us right into a wall,
Yeah.
just with
Mhm.
regards to everything that it says that we can or cannot
Right.
be, and so
Mhm.
we definitely have a choice
Mhm.
as we go through that.
Yeah.
So when you think about where you started at versus
Mhm.
right now,
Mhm.
was your definition of being successful back then the exact same as it is right now?
No, it's completely changed. To me, monetary success was everything, because it's the only way that I knew to mask all the other problems was make more money. Now I realize that true success is happiness and it's purpose and it's fulfillment, right? Because I finally learned that if you achieve those three things, the money just comes. Like, you know what I mean? If I could just make more money, I would be happy. If I could just buy my wife a bigger house, she'd be happy, so I'd be happy, right? If I could just buy that new F-150, I'd be happy. Like that, it doesn't work that way. The goal is make yourself happy, and then in this crazy way, everything else just works out on its own.
Do you feel like that you've found your purpose?
I do, without a doubt. Like I said, it was a great struggle, and it was a lot of resentments at God and everybody else during that struggle. But I realized that everybody was put on this planet to serve, and I had to go through all that crap because I was that stubborn, and I didn't realize that that was my purpose. So now I know that I went through all that stuff because my purpose is to try to save men from some of that struggle.
And isn't it interesting that I feel like that's really the definition of let go?
Yeah, yeah,
Like a lot of times, especially like if you're in church or whatever, you'll hear like let go and let God. And I remember
yeah,
for years
mhm,
being like, what is this let go? Like
yeah, yeah,
what is that? And
yeah.
that is really the definition of it, is really just owning the fact that there
Yeah,
is something out here that's greater than you. And
yeah,
you may not know the answer right then and there.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
you
That's
don't
it.
have to have all of the answers.
Hmm.
So going through this, what's something that Chris just did not know about himself that he knows now without a shadow of a doubt?
That's a great question. I would have to say the top thing would be I didn't know how loving and compassionate that I could be. Something I learned along my personal journey is that until you love yourself, you can't receive love or give love. So I said the words for a lot of years, but I didn't know how to love somebody, and I didn't know how to receive love from them, right? And now that I'm on this journey of living a life of service, I sometimes amaze myself at how compassionate and loving I can be.
So now also that you have arrived at this particular point,
Mm-hmm.
what do you do to keep yourself focused and grounded?
Oh, that same daily routine happens. I mean, my morning routine is insane. My wife, if she was here, would tell you it drove her crazy for a long period of time, and she finally got used to it. But I get up at 4:30 in the morning and drive to the gym every day. And while I'm working out, that is also my meditation time, where it's the only time of the day that I'm all alone and I have no outside interference from children or work or anything else. And a lot of times I talk to God. As strange as it sounds, while I'm lifting weights and doing cardio and, treadmill, whatever
Love
it
that.
is, yeah, I'm talking to God. And first it's thankfulness because I realized when I got sober that I had another second chance at life and I owed him for that. So it usually starts with a lot of gratitude and thankfulness. Then it's about show me the way. Like, my goal is to be better every day, and that goal is never going to be accomplished. It's Personal development is a lifelong journey. I'm going to make mistakes today. The goal is to learn from those mistakes and make less mistakes tomorrow, right? I realized, you know what? I have a great life. There's people out there that would cut their left arm off to have my life. So why am I bitching about having to do the stuff that I have to do? Everything in my life is a blessing. The fact that I get to spend time with my son after literally losing custody of kids, right? The fact that I get to be a life coach and help men change their lives, like the fact that I get to live my life with my wife and pay bills and all those things, those aren't requirements, those aren't commitments, those are blessings. I could literally be dead and I could not be enjoying any of this. So every morning I wake up, I remember that my entire life is a blessing and I'm grateful for all of it. And then I have certain routines that I do that to come up with action steps for that day and for that day only because I have to keep it simple. How can I be the most confident, powerful, compassionate, loving Chris today? And then I accomplish that. And then tomorrow morning, I figure out the next day.
I love that. So there's two things that you said that I just love. So first, how you said you talk to God at the gym.
Mhm.
I love that because a lot of times we want to put God in the box. Like the only way we
Mhm.
can meet him is on the side of
Mhm.
our bed, on our
Yep.
knees, with our
Yeah.
hands like
Yeah.
this. Like, no,
No.
he's
Yep.
everywhere. And as
Yep.
long as you are seeking him,
Yep.
he is there for you.
Oh yeah.
And
Yeah.
you can have those conversations while healing yourself in whatever
Yep.
way that you need to heal.
Yep.
Um, so I absolutely, absolutely love that.
Yeah,
Um,
it's the just touching on that. The biggest thing that I had to realize, right, and we didn't get into my whole story. My story also involves some time in a music career and
oh,
7 years of traveling around as the lead vocalist of a rock and roll band. And there's a lot in my story, right? Yeah. So, but that all started because my mom was a choir director of a church for 4 years, right? But my mom's God could not be my God. Right. And I didn't learn that until I got into early sobriety. My mom's God was that if you do anything wrong, he'll strike you down. And,
fire and brimstone,
yeah,
God,
and,
yeah.
and I couldn't relate to that dude. I resented that dude, you know? So what I needed God to be my friend.
Yeah.
And so I had to figure out what that meant to me. And especially in early recovery, it meant talking to him daily. And sometimes the conversations were not pleasant. I mean, sometimes I cuss God out,
I get it.
but eventually it came to the point to where I was like, all right, man, I get it. I get why I had to do all this. And then it turned into gratefulness and thankfulness for him allowing me to learn the lessons that I needed to learn to become who I am now.
That was so because now we're going to revisit. Now we're going to tap into the whole music industry thing because
Okay.
I didn't
Okay.
know that.
Yeah. So,
But
uh,
I love the fact, but really quickly, I
mm.
love the fact that you said that those conversations were not always good
Oh, yeah, without
conversations.
a
Because
doubt.
once again,
Mhm.
we like to put God in a box where
Yeah.
we just
Yeah.
want to say the Lord prayer. And I have always felt like, and 100% agree,
Yeah.
if God is my father, right? God is my
Hmm.
father. You're
Yeah.
supposed to be able to have real,
Yeah.
organic,
Hmm.
open conversations,
Yeah.
and He know what you're thinking anyway.
Yeah,
He know, he know,
exactly.
he know
I'm
you
not hiding
upset,
nothing. Exactly.
right? He
Right. So,
had nothing.
I thought about it like this, right? I have a friend that we have been friends since we were in fifth grade, and we still talk to this day, every day, right? If he calls me and I can see that, he ain't living the way he's supposed to be living. I'm gonna be the first one that's jumping all over his butt, and I'm gonna give
Right.
him, you know what I mean? So
Love that.
if God wants to be my best friend, then I need to be able to talk to him like that, right? So when I'm mad at the world, I let him know I'm mad at the world. And there are times in my life where I blamed him for a lot of that misery, and I let him know that, and now it's about a lot more gratefulness and thankfulness, but my life had a lot of pain, so I had to share all that pain with God as well.
And to reiterate or to go back
Mhm.
on something that you were
Mhm.
talking about, you gave the
Yeah.
image of the backpack and the stones and the
Hmm.
rocks.
Yeah.
Each of those conversations where you were able to just be 100% real, you
Yeah.
were like literally removing one of the
Yeah.
stones from your
Yeah.
backpack. And
Yeah.
I really want people to see like that's a
Mhm.
correlation. Like you can't
Yeah.
heal from things if you're not willing to have the ugly
Yeah.
conversation or
You
face
know,
it.
that's the biggest thing about personal development, right? You know, I'm a big believer in, yes, AA is a 12-step program, right? And some people believe in it or don't, but most people, addiction or not, could benefit a lot from going through those 12 steps, because a lot of it is about letting go, making amends, letting go and let God life on a daily basis out of gratitude and thankfulness. And those 12 steps are full of a whole lot of that. Right. So once I went through those things, I realized that they weren't just teaching me how to stop drinking and drugging, they were teaching me how to live life. Right. One of the biggest things that I say on a daily basis is a serenity prayer, because there's tons in my life that I still can't control. And the human being in me wants to try to control those things. But when I can remember to control the things that I can and let go of the things that I can't, then I have an incredible day.
Now, you're not the first person that has
Mhm.
ever said that that program would be good
Yeah.
for just anyone. I
Yeah.
have heard
Mhm.
that before
Mhm.
just because of the
Mhm.
principles
Yeah.
and the steps that go along with the
Mhm.
program. So
Yeah.
yes, let's get into this music industry.
Oh,
You said you were the head of a rock band?
I was. Okay. So to make a long story short, like I said, my mom was the choir director. She found out I could sing. She started throwing me up on stage at church. That kind of grew into me doing some TV commercials and stuff when I was in elementary school. And I liked it because I already hated myself, but when everybody was clapping for me, I didn't hate myself so much, right? It was that
Mm.
instant gratification, that fake affirmation. So when I was 14, it turned into rock and roll because I was already starting to drink and use marijuana. And when we were 19, we got signed to a label, an independent label, and we started getting shipped all around the country to perform at bars and different events. And we made it pretty far, but in that environment, addiction is on steroids. You literally work for like an hour a day, so you got 23 hours a day to party. So it's rampant addiction and alcoholism are rampant in that environment. And eventually, the alcohol and the prescription drugs took us all over to the point that it destroyed those dreams. But yes, for almost 7 years, I traveled the country being the lead vocalist of a hardcore metal band.
So the question that I was initially going
Mhm.
to ask, before
Mhm.
wanted you to give us a summary, was
Mhm.
did you feel like being in that environment
Mhm.
exasperated like what you were already going
Oh
through
yeah,
and
without a
basically
doubt.
enabled it?
Yeah, without a doubt. At first, I thought I had found my way out, right? Because I was finally accepted. I had never
Hmm.
felt, I was bullied as a kid and I was pretty good at sports, but I just couldn't fit in with the jocks and you know what I mean, and that kind of stuff. But what I didn't realize is it was a fake exception. They didn't like me, they liked my voice. And so I fed into that because actually somebody was paying attention to me and I didn't feel like the outcast anymore. When I was on stage for that hour, I felt like I was on the top of the world. But then as soon as I got off the stage, I was completely alone again.
Mhm.
And as soon as I felt alone again, my answer was to get so wasted that I couldn't feel anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you still do music or sing at
I
all to this
do.
day?
I don't do it on any grand scale anymore. There are a couple of events, like there's one here in Florida called Sober Stock. It's an AA event convention that they do every year. I will get some guys together and we'll just play that show, and I can kind of get my stage fix in for 1 hour. I get the adrenaline rush, and then I can go back to being a regular guy after that. But yeah, there still are a few small events that I will do every year.
Maeve, you have led a very interesting and diverse life,
Yeah, yeah.
especially being a part of a rock band.
Hmm.
So if I could ask you to give like one piece of advice, like what is
Hmm.
your best tip for someone that's facing those mountains? What is one thing that you would
Hmm.
tell them to help them get up?
I would tell them, I think the biggest thing, and I say it on a lot of my podcast and YouTube videos, is you're not alone. It wasn't until I realized that there were people out there that wanted to help me. I just had to be vulnerable enough to let them. And once you become vulnerable enough to reach out and seek help, you can start figuring out what the root causes from all the traumas were and how to let those things go. But like I said, especially as men, everybody comes to us all day, depending on us and leaning on us, right? And
Mhm.
so many of us feel that there's no one that we can lean on. And so, my biggest thing that I want to get out there to men all over the world is that's not true. You're not alone. I'm here. I don't care how you get a hold of me. I'll sit here and I'll listen. I'll let you cry. I'll let you get it all out. And then together we'll figure out exactly what's wrong and we'll fix it.
That's powerful. So finish this sentence.
Mhm.
Leadership to me is
I would have to say leadership is providing a non toxic environment where the people around you are not afraid to think outside the box and grow and create their own ideas without fear of criticism or resentment.
beautiful. So, Chris, where can people find you and what
Mhm.
different things do you have on the horizon?
Yeah, you can find me in multiple different ways. Christopher Baus on Facebook, TikTok, and Instagram is awareness to obtain. That is from a quote that was very instrumental in my life. It is, in order to obtain any goal, you must first be fully aware of the steps. All right. And so that hit me so hard, I ended up kind of twisting it and making a company name out of it. But yeah, awareness to obtain on Facebook and Instagram. Um, I built a new platform that I kind of touched on that a partner and I have really been working on. It's called Men's Forum. You can find it at Men's Forum 101 on YouTube. And it is a new forum that we have built that is constructed of a free community where men can join this community and have access to me personally, communication wise. There's the second week of April, which is next week. We are starting a live show every Sunday morning at 10 a.m. There's also a ton of instructional videos, all of my podcasts I put on there. And also, we have started something called Family Forum that is pretty much going to teach women in these men's lives how to support properly and how to be there for the men in their life without enabling them. My partner is a financial investor and he is going to take over the side of helping you stop living paycheck to paycheck, learn how to grow wealth, how to create multiple income streams, those kinds of things that on a family basis as well as an individual basis. So this is going to cover all the bases. And like I said, you can check any of my personal profiles. There will be a flyer on there with a QR code where you can join the forum. You just scan the code and register for it. It's free to register. And I am available for one on one coaching, which is what started all of this. So anybody that's interested, DM me or reach out to me through one of my platforms and we can have a gift session and a conversation about seeing if we're a good fit to work together.
Awesome. Thank you so much again, Chris, for taking the time, for sharing your story, for your encouragement, and for being vulnerable.
Mhm.
I will make sure to post all of Chris's links as well as his
Mhm.
access information once we close today. But again, thank you for tuning in to another episode of Leadership is Me. And if today's story is sparked something in you, share it, sit with it, and most importantly, take a step. because the leader that you're looking for is already inside you. And just remember, leadership is not just Dahlia. Leadership is not just Chris. Look in the mirror, as he said, and tell yourself that leadership is me.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Wow. What do you say after that? How do you say I can't do it after that, right? After talking and meeting Chris, who had 25 years, an entire quarter of his life dedicated to addiction, and how he went into that dark place to come out to be the man that he is today, how he was able to reconcile with his marriage and his children, and was in a rock band. That was Chris's journey. Chris could have easily tapped out. Chris could have easily said, you know what, never mind, I'm not strong enough. But he was willing to take all of those little steps to become who we spoke to today. Those little steps matter. And that's the one thing, if you get nothing out of this episode, that's the one thing, at least that I would want for you to take away. Little steps matter. And just because it doesn't feel right in the beginning does not mean it's not going to equate to something at the end. Every day that man says he looks at himself in the mirror and tells himself that he loves himself 10 times. So I'm going to challenge you to do the same thing. Let Chris's journey be your permission to become. Until next time.